Welcome to the next episode of the Ecom Growth Show. I'm your host, Danan Coleman, founder of Ecom Triage, co-founder of Catalog Defender, and I have got someone super awesome. His name's Ricky. He's been sourcing since before he was a baby, and we're going to talk about some of the pros, cons, what you're running into, the climate and how it's changing politically and financially. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what he's developed. And spoiler alert, it's freaking incredible. Just think ChatGPT for sourcing. That's all I'm going to say for right now. Ricky, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Danan. It's great to be on the show. So I was actually born in Hong Kong. I'm a third generation manufacturing family. My grandfather started a textile mill back in the early 60s. My father took over and also started making clothing as well. We have factories in China and Vietnam. We make clothing for like Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger. I actually grew up in China for most of my life, and then I ended up going to college in the States, went to UC Berkeley, studied industrial engineering and operations research. And then I dropped out my second year to start my first company. So I basically realized that a lot of these retailers were very inefficiently collaborating with these overseas vendors. Like their ERP systems were very internal, and there's no way for them to see visibility in like the day-to-day operations, and all that data was in email. So my first company that I created was called Tree Lab. It was basically a supply chain collaboration platform, raised over 22 million from Sequoia, Tencent, GGV, and did that for over 5 years. I sold my company last year to a large public company in Hong Kong, and then came back to the US to start SourceReady. And yeah, right now, as Danan kind of mentioned, our goal is to basically simplify product sourcing for even beginners, as well as help established companies automate a lot of the repetitive work that happens in sourcing today, as well as identify better manufacturers in the world. So yeah,
Yeah.
really excited to be on the show today.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for being here. I'm really excited to talk about what your experience and what you've built to solve some of the problems. Now, you and I spoke earlier today, and I told you my experience in sourcing and working with Alibaba. The fact that I've actually gone to China, gone to the Canton Fair, sat down with manufacturers, and still had problems. And you have, I don't know if I want to claim you've eliminated like 90% of the confusion, but as you were showing me SourceReady, I might go that far as to say, like, you can take any average Joe off the street, they can go to SourceReady, and then, oh, spoiler alert, use, if you're an Amazon seller, use is the code Amazon seller? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
All caps?
all caps Amazon seller. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're an Amazon seller, anyone that's an Amazon seller, he's giving the entire Amazon community 15% off, Ricky. Yeah. So 15% off. So if you want to go try SourceReady, like just go, I'm going to tell you right now, just go get an account and try it
The core
and
platform
use.
is to start, just so you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's free to start. You can poke around a little bit. Yeah. Anyhow, we're going to get into that in another video that where we'll actually dive into the features and benefits of it. So let's talk about sourcing. I've got a list of questions for you, and I'm going to start off with the first one. You ready? All right, cool. How has global sourcing changed in the past few years, especially post-pandemic and post-pandemic, the US-China shifts in temperature?
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest keyword is disruption, and I think disruption is basically creating a lot of headaches because there was over time. I think because China became this global manufacturing powerhouse, everyone by default just went to China for everything, right? And China is great. China, you can literally go to a city and make everything from scratch. There's like thousands of factories that can make every product. And Chinese manufacturers have gotten very competent over the years. However, what the pandemic has shown us, as well as this trade war, is that if you source everything out of one region, as soon as some disruption happens, your entire supply chain comes to a halt. So resilience is what both large companies as well as small brands should be thinking about a lot more, given the geopolitical rivalry, and just in general, things can happen that are outside of planning, and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Having said this, I think China plus one, this term actually has existed before even the pandemic has happened. And I think the challenge with kind of leaving China, is that China is just so good,
Mhm.
at manufacturing that oftentimes people just don't wanna deal with the headache of going to these more developing countries, and a lot of times it's even hard to find the supplier's, information because not every country has, like, a website like Alibaba, right? So
Yeah.
I do think that over the past few years, we do see an increase in kind of this shift away from China. But I think for most, especially small companies, it's still kind of a big headache and challenge to leave China.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, when I was manufacturing my camping blankets, I was searching for manufacturers outside China, and I found like a 2 maybe in India, and I heard that there was one in Mexico, never found it. And I searched the US. I called companies that make down blankets for like duvet covers and stuff like that. I sent them my product and they're like, "Yeah, no, we can't do this. We don't." And what was missing in America was the machinery to blow the down into nylon and then sew it. And so I stopped selling the product because I really wanted to source it from the US. I was willing to pay double what I was paying in China to source from the US, and I couldn't find it, and so I just went, "You know what? I'm gonna sunset this product because I don't like dealing with China." I've had problems with the like 3 separate manufacturers of the product, major quality issues in terms of, like, how much, down they put in. Some of them were off by, ounces that resulted in significantly less down and therefore not as warm. So, what you showed me today probably would have eliminated every bit of that. So, yeah. Let's go on to question number 2. How should small e-commerce brands approach sourcing as opposed to large corporations?
Yeah. I think the biggest difference obviously is that you don't have the scale, the negotiating power, and the manpower as a large corporation, right? So if you look at any company like a PVH that owns Calvin Klein or Tommy Hilfiger or Lululemon, they have hundreds of people in Hong Kong or in Asia that are running around these factories. And they can spend a lot of time evaluating vendors for a long time before they decide. As a small brand, you don't have the luxury, you don't have the negotiating power to do this.
Yeah.
So I guess the number one thing that I really do think I want to emphasize is that as much as it is about you selecting the right supplier, good suppliers also will choose good customers. So when you evaluate vendors, obviously there are certain things that you should watch out for that are red flags. But at the same time, if you do find a good manufacturer, a lot of manufacturers like the ones that work with these big brands, if you just approach them and say, "Hey, can you make this product for me? I want to make 200 pieces." Most of them are going to reject you because they're not interested in your small business.
Yeah.
However, coming from a family of manufacturing, I can tell you that no factory will ever say no definitively. The reason why they say no is they don't see potential. You want to sell them a vision of where your business could be in 3 years, in 5 years. And it's better to work with a better manufacturer that you have to convince them to work with than work with a small no-name trading company that is desperate for for your order but can never deliver consistent results. Uh,
Let's pause that right there. Can you please define for us the difference between a trading company and a manufacturer and how the operations are different?
Yeah. So if you go on Alibaba, for example, and you search for a product, I don't know if people know this, 65% of suppliers on Alibaba are not manufacturers. They're
I
agents,
didn't know it was that high.
65%. And you can search this on Google. Like, it's very public information. They're trading companies. And what I mean by that is they don't own any facilities and they're basically middlemen that when you tell them a request, right, they'll send out a bunch of requests to factories that they know and say, hey, can you make this? And they charge you a difference in pricing. Trading companies are not necessarily bad, right? So it's not that, because they're a trading company, they're inherently bad. What they are a problem is that the consistency and the incentives are oftentimes different. So what I mean by that is because they make money from profiting the difference between the factory costs and the cost you're paying, they're going to be incentivized to squeeze the margin lower on the factory side, and that oftentimes compromises quality. And yeah, so what I would recommend is if you do want to work with an agent, so like if you don't want to handle the quality and production yourself, work with an agent based on a fixed service fee instead of buying through the agent. So the difference in that is like the agent. So every PO that you issue to the end manufacturer, you can actually see what the actual price is, and you just pay them maybe a 2% service fee instead
Mhm.
of saying, I'm actually gonna the trading company quote you a price and you have no idea what the actual factory cost is. Like that is where issues start coming along where, if you're not experienced in the specific product, you might get ripped off like 50%, right? And you don't want that to happen.
That did happen to me on order number 1. So, that's excellent advice, thank you. All the things I wish I knew, the first time I was sourcing products from China. Alright, cool. So here's the next question. What are the biggest mistakes brands make when choosing a supplier?
Yeah, I think like if you look at publicly available information on suppliers, like if you go on Alibaba, for example, a lot of times all the suppliers look the same from like just an eye, and they'll look at the product images that the factory puts on Alibaba. I can guarantee you that factories always overpromise. They'll like upload every image that they think they can get track clients with, but a lot of them they actually can't make or can make to the quality of that product image. So don't evaluate a vendor based on what images they put on their Alibaba's website. There is no vetting on that. They can upload as many images as you want. And I can tell you the statistic. Like we've crawled Alibaba, right? And the average number of images per supplier on Alibaba is around 1,600.
My
So
gosh.
so a lot of factories, the way they increase their business, because ultimately they just want traffic, right? They'll just upload a bunch of photos that they think people might be interested in. But in reality, they're only able to make a subset of that. And when you send them a request to make a specific product, if they can't make it, they'll just outsource it to some other
Right,
factories.
right, but
So
still
that's
charge you for it.
I still charge you for it. Yeah. So that's why there's a huge quality gap. A lot of times it's because it's not actually the factory making it. They're outsourcing it as well. It's not in their control. So that's the first thing. And how do you change that is you want to look at what type of customers this supplier is working with. I think
How
that's
do you
gonna
tell
help.
that?
So you can actually leverage tools out there. So for example, SourceReady, we have data from customs. You can see where they're exporting to, who their customers are. There's obviously other tools as well. Like it's not just us. You can use Import Yeti, Import Genius, but essentially, this data allows you to kind of build a persona of what the supplier is. So if you go to a trade fair and you meet a factory, one of the most common questions people ask is like, "Hey, who are your customers?" Right?
Mhm.
But if you just
That
but a
that
lot of
wasn't my
factories will lie.
that wasn't my question. Mine was, "How much is it to make this?" Here you go.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that question is important because quality is a very subjective thing, right? Like if you ask a factory, "Oh, can you make it, good quality?" Like of course every factory says, "Yes, I
Yes.
can make the best quality," and there's no way for you to check. The way you really evaluate it, the best example I like to mention is like Google evaluates the reputation of websites. They have PageRank based on how are other websites linking to them, right? If there's high quality websites linking to your website in the eyes of Google, this is a good website. I think similar to this, a supplier's reputation for quality and consistency is based on the reputation of the customers they work with. So if a supplier is working with brands that are established and have consistent quality, then it's going to be more likely that this factory has a more standardized quality process than a supplier that doesn't, right? So I think this is a huge way to vet a supplier just by looking at the type of customers they work with. And that's part of the motivation why I created SourceReady is because I think a lot of valuable information that people need to vet factories are not publicly available or not easy to access.
That's for sure, yeah.
A lot of people don't even know how to analyze this data, right? If I just dump you a bunch of customs data, like you don't even know how to like look through that. And I think this is where technology can really help, where we can make sense of this data and basically generate kind of personalized recommendations and personas of suppliers based on the historical customers they've worked with.
Mm, very interesting. So, yeah, I recall going to Import Yeti one time and looking and be like, "Alright, close tab." It was like it just made no sense to me. So that's excellent. Now, that brings me to my next question. We know what's happening today, but where do you see sourcing heading in the next over the next 5 years?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I think diversification is something that everyone is going to have to do. So you don't want to source everything. Not to say you don't source out of China. Like I think China is still great for certain products, but you really want to look at everything from a end-to-end cost perspective. So it's not just the production costs, it's the shipping cost, it's the tariff cost, it's also the cost of risk. you have to factor that in, right? If something happens with China or something, you have to factor that cost in. And I think where the industry is going is people traditionally don't want to source out of multiple country of origins or COs because of the increased operational complexity of doing so. Only very large organizations before have the ability to do this. I think with technology and AI, and with the democratization of like this data, I think it's going to make it easier for even smaller companies to do traditionally what only big companies can do, which is basically diversifying their supply chain.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest trend that I see. And then the second thing is, so there's a statistic as well. Like Vietnam is where a lot of people are looking to outside of China,
Yeah.
and the statistic is actually 80% of export factories in Vietnam are foreign owned. What I mean by that is these factories are Chinese people opening it. They're Taiwanese companies, Japanese companies. And the great thing about that is it's now actually, like for example, we work with Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, like our own family business. And what we can see is a lot of retailers now, they prioritize working with suppliers with multiple country of origins. And the great thing about that is you can have one relationship with a supplier, and because this supplier has multiple factories globally, you can put the work to them. So they might
Yeah.
put some of your orders in Vietnam, some of the orders in China, some of your orders in Mexico, for example, if they have a facility there. But your line of communication is still with one supplier, and they handle all the complexity of these different countries. So I
Hmm.
think that's another trend where it's like, yes, you see a diversification of the country of origin, but you actually see a concentration of like, hey, the easier way to do it is find vendors with multiple country of origins and just like build a really good relationship with them so that they can help you diversify without you having to do this on the ground work.
I like that. I never even considered that, but that makes perfect sense. And is that data that you have that okay.
So you can filter, like, I want to look for suppliers with facilities in both China and Vietnam, or China, Vietnam, and Mexico, right? So, like,
Mm.
for example, my family business, we opened our Vietnam factory 7 years ago, but now we're also opening a Mexico factory. And we're also looking to actually open a US factory. So we're actually in the process of looking for facilities in like Detroit and in North Carolina. So I do think that's a trend that's happening is like these good manufacturers, they realize that they don't want to produce everything in one place as well. So they're going to do foreign investment and open these new factories elsewhere. So when you look for a supplier, I think if you're a brand, the smart thing to do is put the overhead to them, put the on the supplier, right? They'll manage all the different complexities of managing these different countries, and you get the benefit of having the diversification.
Makes perfect sense, absolutely. And me being a person of convenience, like, I don't wanna do that extra work.
Yep. Yep.
So, okay, that's awesome. And and so you said you've already got that data. So, with the sourcing industry, if you think it's heading that way, because, I mean, that's what you're doing, and you're seeing other factories doing that, and you've already got that data,
Yep.
then people that are using SourceReady could immediately reap the benefits of that?
Yeah. So, for example, let's say you wanted to make clothing and you can say, hey, I want to look for Lululemon quality yoga pants suppliers with facilities in China, Southeast Asia, as well as in North America, right? And we can search through the database to find that. One caveat I do want to mention is these multiple CO factories are going to have a higher bar for customers. So
CO, you mean country of origin, right?
country of origin,
Yeah.
yes. So they're typically bigger suppliers, right? And
Mhm.
they're gonna pick customers just like how you pick suppliers. So I think the big mistake a lot of kind of these brands do is they'll send an inquiry without introducing who they are. They'll be like, "Hey, I want to make this T-shirt for 500 pieces. Can you do it?" They won't even reply you. I can tell you, like these factories, they won't even look at your email. They'll just like ignore it because they don't know who you are. They're not desperate for your business. So what's important is just like how you cold email customers, you need to build a compelling argument to basically catch their eye. So I'll give you one example. So I don't know if you know a brand called Built Basics. They're a very actually a fast growing athleisure brand. They do 350 million on Shopify now. When we worked with them, they were doing less than 5 million. Very, very early stage brand. But we took a bet on them because the founder basically created a deck to show them their product vision, how are they different from the competitors, how are they going to spend money on ads, their differentiation, just kind of pitching the factory of like this future vision. So basically they said, okay, right now I can't give you a lot of orders because I'm still small, but
Yeah.
3 years out, I'm going to be able to get to this space. So I think like so we actually see in our system, because we can actually allow you to like bulk outreach to factories. We see that customers that make a compelling argument in the introductory statement get overall 60 to 70% reply rate versus people that are just very transactional and say, okay, I have a request. Please give me a quote. You'll
Yeah.
only get responses from these like trading companies that don't care about the customer quality. They'll just make a one-time profit on this order. And this
Yeah.
is why they'll reply you. But to be honest, like I think where the trend is going is like you actually want to look for these really established manufacturers, and from their mentality, they also want to look for the next Lululemon, the next
Mhm.
kind of up and coming brand, and they want to be your supplier before you become big, right?
That
Uh,
makes sense. Okay, I've never
there's
considered
a
it
sales
from the.
process to this.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a sales process like any other. You gotta get a little bit of top of funnel brand recognition,
Yep,
and then build some trust, and then take them out to dinner, and then get a contract signed.
yep.
Well, that was really informative, and that makes perfect sense. All right, let's go on to my next question, and this is where you're really going to step in because you've already built this. How is AI changing the way brands find and evaluate suppliers?
Well, I actually think AI is better at humans at a couple of tasks. So one thing that AI is very good at is looking at large volumes of data, and evaluating that data. So I'll give an example. Like if you go on Alibaba, most people don't go past the third page, right? You can look at the
Mhm.
first page of factories that you see, and you like choose the top three. Um, and the reason is because the as a human, it takes you probably 10-15 minutes just to read through one factory profile. And you're not going to have time to look at 1,000 factory profiles. AI is good at is, let's say, you wanted to search for like some specific product with a certain requirement. AI can literally look at tens of thousands of suppliers, calculate, the different pros and cons of each, the tariff rates for each, benchmark the supplier's background against your requirements, and then generate a report for you. So I think how AI is changing this is essentially a lot of this evaluation work and kind of initial search. I think AI is going to completely replace the human. So we see this even at very large retailers, right? Like the Walmarts, the Kohl's, the Ralph Laurens of the world. Even though they have very established supply chain networks, they're also trying to leverage AI to basically do things that they traditionally just aren't able to do. The second thing I think AI is really good at is basically automating and structuring a lot of this conversational data. So the joke is like most of today's supply chain data lives in email. Even at very big companies, right? Everything
Yep.
is very basically just talking with the factory, like, oh, what is your price? Oh, and the factory asks you, oh, can you change the material here? Is that okay? Like, can you confirm this? And it's like it takes days going back
Yes.
and forth with the supplier again and
Yeah.
again. And a lot of times, let's say you're talking to 4 different factories, a lot of times the factories will ask you the same questions and you have to like answer each one the same thing. This work is completely today automatable with AI. So you just have to provide the context the AI wants. The AI can auto respond these different factories as well as
Which you
organize.
showed me.
Exactly. And it can organize all these answers in a way that makes it easy for you to look through, right? So if you had 20 different email threads across 20 vendors, imagine how you would even compare and benchmark these different responses. It would take you a long time to copy and paste them like Excel sheet and like
Yeah,
see.
exactly.
But I think with
That's
AI,
literally what we did.
yeah, exactly, and it takes a lot of time, right?
Yes.
So how AI is changing this, like, is it's making the marginal cost of looking for a new vendor close to zero. So what I mean by that is traditionally, let's say you want to make a product, most people reach out to maybe 5 or 6 suppliers at most because it's just too much work. Like no one's gonna talk to 100 factories. Like no one has the time to do that, right? Even at big companies. With AI, like we have customers that use our system, they literally reach out to like 300 factories. And like the AI is talking concurrently with 300 different suppliers, collecting all this information. From the factory's perspective, is honestly they probably hate it. They're like, oh my god, like it's becoming more. It's like a bidding war. But
Yeah.
but I think this is where the industry is moving. It's where you can have AI agents allow you to do things that traditionally are just unfeasible, right? It's unfeasible traditionally to reach out to 300 suppliers.
Yeah. I mean, so you just actually named it. It's an AI agent, AI sourcing agent, except it actually has the conversation for you
Yep.
and gets you the end result of a conversation. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's all built in to SourceReady in an easy. You showed it to me. I was flabbergasted at just how easy it is. You don't even have to, oh my god. So many late nights I have had waiting for a response, you know.
Following up,
Yeah.
answering the factory's questions, and then when you
Yes.
answer, there's a time difference, so they don't respond to you right away. You wait another 8
Yes.
hours. By the time
Yes.
they respond, you're sleeping, and it takes, like, 5 days just to confirm something, and you do this 10 times with 10 different suppliers. Yeah.
Absolutely. We spent months, literally months of just back and forth and back and
Yep.
well, I was gonna ask you what inspired you to create SourceReady and what problem you're trying to solve, but we just had an entire
Yeah.
conversation about that.
Yeah.
Um, I dude, I think that you've brought some incredible value to the people that are listening to this. I hope they listen all the way through. And yeah, like I've already played with my own SourceReady account. It's like, man, you just first of all, you made my current self super pissed off at you today for not having it when I needed this 10
Yeah.
years ago.
I should have built AI 10 years ago.
Yes. But also my past self thanks you for solving the problem, you know? Well, okay, so everyone that's listening, thank you for being here. Thanks for being to the end of this. SourceReady.com is his website, and you need to use the code Amazon Seller because this is something he's offering to the entire Amazon space. He understands it's been a major problem for us, and it's going to get you 15% off. Dude, thanks for being on the show,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for bringing the knowledge bombs.
Of course, thank you so much.
All right, dude, I'll see you around.
See you. Bye-bye.